I spent 3.5 mind-blowing years in Japan from November 2019 to March 2023, and in this video I want to tell you how I now see the UK after this time in Japan. But if you're new to the channel, my name is Fred Barton and I'm a former foreign policy analyst and Chinese linguist at the British Embassy in Beijing. I quit my job, started traveling around the world, and I now make videos about learning Chinese, traveling and life in the UK. The first thing I noticed after moving to Japan was the incredible level of politeness. And I had always thought of the UK as a polite country, but the Japanese take things to an absolutely whole new level. My mum came over to visit and she was in a wheelchair, and on many occasions people just went out of their way to help her. We went into a Starbucks and the girl came from behind the till. She ran out, opened the door, helped me get my mum inside. And this is just one of many instances where people are incredibly polite in Japan. I always saw the UK as a polite country before, but after coming back from Japan, this had changed because they had set the bar to a completely new level. The second amazing thing about Japan is the degree of service. It doesn't matter if you're in a McDonald's, if you're in a Starbucks, if you're in a public toilet, wherever you may be, the people working there take pride in their jobs, take their work very seriously, give you incredible service, and this really puts the UK to shame. When you come back to the UK, people don't seem to enjoy their jobs, they're badly presented, they don't have any enthusiasm, and especially in the service industry, they give you a very bad customer service experience. So in Japan, this was amazing. The level of service is truly excellent, and it kind of puts the UK to shame by comparison. The third point, which is somewhat related, is the Japanese work ethic, and you see this across all sectors and areas, as I said, whether it's in the service industry, even in McDonald's, or whether it's with tradesmen, skilled manual laborers, in companies, wherever you are, there is just an intense work ethic, and it's very impressive. And by comparison, the UK looks pretty slovenly. The UK work ethic looks very weak compared to Japan. And that's not really a criticism of the UK in some ways, because to be honest, apart from maybe Germany, pretty much anywhere in the world is going to look like it has a pretty slovenly work ethic compared to Japan. The fourth point is somewhat related to the last, and that is the level of discipline in Japan. People are extremely disciplined, and you see this even with little children walking to school in winter in shorts. They wear shorts all year round. They are tough. There is a level of toughness in the country, and it is impressive. And this goes throughout the whole society, and it comes across in some of the areas that I also talked about, like the service industry and stuff. People are well presented, well turned out. They have standards. It's related to a high level of standards across the country, and that goes for personal presentation, personal hygiene, how people conduct themselves. There is a high standard across the country, and also it's interlinked with this high level of personal discipline, which I very much respect. And by comparison, the UK most definitely is not disciplined. It is pampered. It is spoiled by a government which gives out a lot of benefits. It looks weak, unhealthy, badly presented, slovenly. So I really think the level of discipline that they have in Japan is something that's very admirable. The fifth striking comparison between the UK and Japan is the level of safety. I went to Tokyo on my first trip to Japan, and I saw all these cell phones on the table in Starbucks, and I didn't understand what that was about. I couldn't understand why people wouldn't just be snatching them up and running off with them like they would do probably in London. And it was people were putting down their cell phones to actually hold their place while they went up to get their drink. So people were using cell phones as placeholders, even in the capital city, in Tokyo. So this is kind of an incredible eye-opener for me, and the level of personal safety in Japan is really amazing. The sixth comparison is to do with cleanliness, and this is related again to levels of standard, discipline, work ethic, all that kind of stuff. Cleanliness in Japan is incredible. I would get up in the morning and go for a run to the gym, and I would see people up at 5, 6 a.m. hosing down the pavements outside their shops and their apartments, cleaning the pavements, cleaning the sidewalks, and just keeping the place very tidy. You would often see older people weeding public hedgerows and green areas, cleaning out ditches. It's all linked to this level of social cohesion and discipline and personal standards, and it just makes the place extremely clean, very well maintained, and it makes it a pleasure to be there. And by comparison, the UK looks like an absolute dump, especially recently, where councils are not giving money to even cut hedgerows or collect garbage. this makes it even more striking, the comparison between the UK and Japan in terms of cleanliness, whether you're talking about public toilets, even restaurants, whatever it is. The UK looks grubby and dirty to many countries by comparison, but even more so to Japan, which is probably the cleanest country in the world and has the highest standards for cleanliness. So those are all comparisons which put Japan in a very favourable light. There were a couple of other comparisons that I noticed coming back to the UK where I thought the UK was actually better than Japan. One of them was actually the vitality of the people, and what I find particularly in East Asia, very cohesive societies, collectivist societies, which are very rule-based and often homogenous. They can be very safe and very disciplined, but often this comes at a cost of personal expression and personal freedom. So it crushes some of the natural human spirit and vibrancy and vitality out of the people a little bit. And I do find that the English are much more creative, lively, more vital. So it's always a matter of compromise between these two things, personal freedom and the collective interest of the society and following rules very tightly. But the UK, it just has more life to it in terms of the people. I find in Japan, the people can be very repressed, can seem depressed and quite drab. So the UK definitely has more vibrancy among the people compared to Japan. I would say also the UK stacks up very well against Japan in terms of TV, comedy and the creative arts. Watching Japanese TV, it's extremely scripted, stiff, fake. Japanese people can seem fake anyway because they want to maintain face. They don't give too much of their true emotions away in order to try and maintain social cohesion. But when you're watching TV, it looks absolutely absurd because it's so plastic, so fake, so scripted. The UK is a bit more authentic in the content it puts out. I know there are problems in the UK now with freedom of speech and so on, but I always rate UK comedy, and Japanese TV looked a bit puerile and bizarre by comparison. And the third point, and this is through no fault of Japan of its own, is the architecture of the UK. In comparison to Japan, it's far more varied and interesting, I would say, in the major cities, places like London, Bristol, Bath, Cambridge, wherever you're going. Edinburgh, Manchester, there's amazing architecture, whereas a lot of that was obviously flattened in the war in Japan. So what you see is a kind of quite depressing, monotone, prefab kind of structure a lot of the time on the landscape. There's a lot of kind of, looks like prefabricated buildings with bathroom type tile exteriors. It's very clean and chic, but it's also quite monotone, quite depressing. So the UK has much more variety in its cities in terms of architectural style. So those are my main comparisons between the UK and Japan after 3.5 years living in Japan. I would say overall, I absolutely love Japan. It's a country that I would go and move back to anytime I could. I love the people, I love the culture, I love the discipline, I love the standards. And I think that especially puts the UK to shame in terms of how well people present themselves, how well they work, how hard they work, and all of those things. So I think the UK could really learn from Japan in that area specifically. But I absolutely love Japan. If you haven't been there, I would definitely recommend checking it out.